So, I was yesterday meeting a couple of guys from Benchmark Capital, and there was a joke we were making that whenever a VC opens his mouth, he's essentially trying to sell himself. But I think Vinny's done a great job in trying to sell Southeast Asia and not sort of sell himself. Fantastic presentation. Really exciting stuff happening in Asia. I'm probably going to take a slightly different approach and show you what's happening in Asia from the perspective of Jungle and Jungle's portfolio companies. So you'll get to see what some of our startups are doing, and hopefully that will give you an insight of what's going on. Before I sort of move on, just a quick introduction about who we are. We are a Singapore-based entrepreneur-backed venture firm. Essentially, most of our LPs are entrepreneurs, and we are also entrepreneurs. Between me and my partner, we spent 30 years collectively in Singapore building businesses across the region, and we are trying to bring our networks, our networks in capital and talent to the startups that we invest in. Our focus is to help build category leaders across the region. So when we invest in a company, we try and see if this company is trying to solve a problem which is applicable across the entire APAC geography, excluding China. So everything from North Asia, which is Korea, Japan, Australia, South Asia, which is India, and Southeast Asia. So we try and find companies that are solving problems which are across the region rather than something which is only specific to Indonesia or to Thailand. We have 15 million under management right now, and this includes LPs like Excel Partners who have invested in our fund. We've been really fortunate to have 3 exits already, one of which is Travelmob, which was acquired by HomeAway last year, and we will, I'll share a little bit more about that journey. It was acquired within 12 months, which is very exciting for the whole ecosystem. I'll straight away dig into some of our companies, so that will help you understand what are some of the challenges that these companies are trying to solve, which are applicable across the region. Please excuse the formatting, but essentially Fastcash is a company that is their technology essentially is a patent that helps you attach value to a URL. And what that does is that it allows wallet-to-wallet interaction without the requirement for somebody to know what the other wallet is like. Essentially, if I am in a mobile wallet from a telco like AT&T and I want to transfer you money, today the only way I can transfer you money is to know what your wallet ID is or what your bank account is or whatever it is. But Fastcash enables us to now transfer money directly to the social ID. So I can transfer to your Facebook account, to your WhatsApp account, to your email, to your mobile, wherever else I want. So Fastcash is kind of becoming the social link between wallets and between all the digital economy platforms which are out there. Today, one of the biggest remittance providers in the world is using Fastcash to help their target customers send money over mobile. Doku, which is one of the sort of payment providers in Indonesia, is using them as a platform. There are banks in Kenya which are using them as a platform. There's a bank which is using this between Singapore, India remittance corridors. So that's the kind of problem that these guys are solving. Crayon Data is a big data company based out of Singapore. This is a second-time entrepreneur, and probably one of the only companies in Asia which is building a taste graph for the entire Asia. So they are tracking more than 1 billion data points every month right now and growing. And brands such as PayPal are using Crayon Data's platform to determine what SME customers they should go and target. So if you go to Asia today, they don't have a credit rating system. So there's no way of knowing which customer is a good customer, what the risk profile of the customer is. Crayon Data, using their platform, is building a ranking system which PayPal is using to determine what SMEs they want to go and acquire. This is a mobile-first commerce company called ShopSpot, which is based in Thailand and scaling across Asia now. Again, solves a critical issue that women everywhere in the world, but especially in Thailand, love to shop, love to browse. But they love to browse and keep them and save their cart and eventually go and buy it at the end of the month when they get salaries and stuff like that. So they built a very unique model, and then they were at the top of the Apple Store in Thailand and all the other geographies right now. ZipDial, this is a company from India which has now become regional. This company was last month, if I'm not wrong, nominated by, rather, it debuted at number 8 in Fast Company's most innovative company in the world. This is alongside Google, Baidu, and many other companies. They are a marketing and analytics platform for the emerging markets. They've so far serviced over 420 million customers in India. And they have a very peculiar model, which is of emerging markets. In emerging markets, people, because there is so much prepaid customers, they don't like to make calls because they lose value. So they give missed calls to each other, and there is some sort of a language protocol which has been formed between people. Like when I'm in India, when my driver comes in the morning, he reports for duty, he gives me a missed call, which is a signal to me that he's arrived. And if he gives me 2 missed calls, which means that he's not come and I should call him back. So that they've sort of captured that behavior and turned it into a marketing platform which has got 15 times more engagement metrics than Facebook and Twitter campaigns. Top 50 brands in India are using them, and that's why Fast Company nominated them to be one of the most innovative companies in the world. Quickly moving on to Travelmob, which sort of leads me to the next few slides. This is a company which we invested in 2012 and was acquired in 2013. It's a shameless clone of Airbnb, and they built a phenomenal inventory across the region. And initially, Airbnb tried to acquire them, but that didn't happen. But in 2013, HomeAway acquired them for 30 million within 12 months of starting. And I'll share a little bit of their story as I walk through the next slides, which is really about, so from all of these exciting founders like ZipDial, Fastcash, Crayon data, what have we really learned? And especially in the case of Travelmob, this sort of lesson comes to board. And I'm sure these lessons are very applicable here as well, but speaking from an Asian perspective, Travelmob was the 5th company that started doing what they were doing. There was Airbnb in the region, there was Rocket Internet had a company there was Roomarama, there was iBillik in Malaysia, there were local players, there were regional players. They were not first, but they were definitely faster than anybody else. So when they launched, within a year, they were able to create, in terms of just the size of the inventory, as close as Airbnb in the region. So within 12 months, they scaled up to be number 2, and that's what made them the real threat. And that sort of is a lesson that we've seen many often, that in Asia, especially if your first doesn't matter, sometimes you're actually paving the way for others to come and do it faster and better. And so companies like Travelmob have been able to sort of capitalize on this being fast model very quickly. The second fact, which we've realized again, is that when you're small, being focused is extremely useful and almost acts as a barrier of entry. When Travelmob started, they didn't try and become an Asia-Pac-wide base. They did a lot of analysis on which are the biggest corridors of travel intra-APAC. So like there are a lot of tourists from Japan that come into Thailand, Japan that come into Singapore. There are a lot of tourists from Russia that come into Thailand. So they picked on some peculiarities like that from a travel window and tried to focus on 2 or 3 of these corridors and really dominated those corridors to an extent that it became a threat for some of the big boys. So when you're small, the lesson in Asia, where capital is also limited, is that if you're extremely focused, it acts like a great barrier for entry, and you can build on top of that. This is true anywhere in the world, and not so, even so in Asia as well. But I think in case of companies like Travelmob, they had a much more obsessive view of this, and went to the extent of understanding what their users, which are even inventory hosts, what do they care about. So for example, one of the things that they built was, the hosts in Thailand didn't want to get paid in US dollars. They wanted to get in local currency. So how do you create a payment platform which covers 27 geographies and takes care of all the currency exchanges and makes sure that the hosts feel comfortable in the way they are getting paid. So things like that make them very unique. But more unique is the fact that you need to be very, very obsessed about fundraising in Asia. I think Vinny brought this point out with the Series A crunch, but all across, I think, right, starting from the seed stage, companies are totally undercapitalized. And that's why funds like us are focused on doing lesser investments and putting more money in companies rather than doing more investments. An average seed company average I say, and maybe you guys can correct me, average seed company in US raises about $1.2 to $1.4 million seed rounds. Average seed rounds in Singapore and Asia are less than 500, 600 Ks. And that really starts the problem. So we need more seed money so the companies have time to make mistakes, to learn and people companies. So in Asia, you will almost find that single founder companies don't do well because at least one of the founders has to be completely dedicated to fundraising. I know it's not great, but that's the reality of where we are today. In terms of talent building, companies like Travelmob, ZipDial, Fastcash, Crayon data, the way they've gone about building talent is by hiring the first two rock stars. Asia has got a very herd mentality, and the same is true for talent as well. So if you're hiring that one CTO or one VP engineering that's the guy that has got the biggest fans, then you made it. Because then there will be a lot more people that will be willing to join your startup, and your work goes down exponentially. People will follow him into whatever he's doing. So you need to hire people who have a lot of fan following. One key partnership is, this is a very interesting one. We are seeing that repeatedly, that partnerships are creating big barriers for entry. HomeAway was, eventually acquired Travelmob, but initially they had a partnership with HomeAway, where Travelmob was powering all the Asia inventory for the people who are coming to HomeAway. And just by the sheer volume of traffic that was coming to HomeAway, it was evident to HomeAway that they had to buy Travelmob. In fact, the day they announced the partnership, HomeAway stock went up by 6%, and it's a $3 billion market cap company. So I think strong partnerships create big barriers for entry, and it is extremely, extremely relevant in Asia. Not just for Travelmob, companies like ZipDial have partnered with Twitter. And Twitter today is using ZipDial to onboard their emerging market customers where people don't have access to smartphones or computers. So those kind of partnerships are creating big barriers for entry, and is the model going forward. Needless to say, founders in Asia need a lot more perseverance, and I think Vinny will testify for this as well, and also Singtel. Travelmob, for instance, because they were the fifth startup in their space, there was nobody who was ready to fund them. They put their own money on the table. Airbnb tried to buy them out when they were just starting, but the offer was a real low ball. They rejected the offer. It made it even more difficult for them to acquire, get funding. Some big funds from US as well sort of rejected them, who are very active in Asia, saying that, listen, you are too far behind, and and all those things. But the founders persisted, and eventually we led the round, and Axel Partners came in and joined the round, and this company ended up being the #1 player in that space right now. So I think perseverance, if you really know what you're doing, if you have the skills to build an Asia, Pan-Asia play, perseverance is very important in terms of the founding. So I'll finish this by kind of summarizing what we've learned from our founders. Being fast and focused is extremely important. Be obsessive about users, but also super obsessive about fundraising. We have dedicated partners in our fund that help our companies do fundraising. And not to mention that partnerships are huge gold mines. With that, I'll probably sort of end this and open maybe a question.
Questions,
Yeah, maybe a question.
Questions?
Yes. Hi.
I'm curious, what are some of the things to watch out for when you're having a partnership with a larger company like Twitter or like Facebook?
Repeat the question.
So I guess the question is that what are the things to watch out for when you're trying to work with a big company like a gorilla, right? I think it really stems from trying to, the first thing you have to determine is what do you have of value to offer to this big guy? A partnership for the partnership's sake does not work. Travelmob had access to this unique inventory in Asia that was very relevant to HomeAway, and that's why they were playing at level. ZipDial had 420 million consumers in India, which was not accessible to Twitter. So it was very valuable to Twitter, and hence Twitter was playing ball. So my sense is that you will have to have some value proposition that they look into, and then it makes it easier for you to deal with the big companies there. Nobody?
We have time for one more question.
Seriously? Okay. Thanks a lot. Pleasure to be here.